All righty, let's kick it off. James, how's it going?
Yeah, really good. Thank you very much.
Good. Hope you're having I think it's late over there, right?
Not too late. 5 minutes past 9 in the evening. Could be worse.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do that tonight. I'll make this as quick as possible so you can get back to it. Cool. So just to start out, for people that don't know you, give us the 2-minute highlight reel of your career so far, just so people know where you're coming from.
Sure. So I'm James. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Postdog. We're an open source product operating system. We basically give you a bunch of tools in one place that help make sure that the software you're building something that people want. I started off life. I spent 10 years trying to be a professional cyclist, crashed a bunch of times, bootstrapped an online marketing company to a few $1 million a year, ended up as a VP of sales at an enterprise software company, selling software to large banks. And here I am doing open source dev tooling. So yeah, don't ask me what happened, but yeah, it's been pretty good. We did Y Combinator as well, which was definitely one of the highlight points of my career.
Yeah. Love that. That's so funny. Literally, first question I got for you is you've held, a wide range of titles, head of engineering, VP of sales. Now you're the CEO of Posthog. A lot of people that are heads of their respective areas are scared of starting their own startup. What advice do you have for them about what it's like being a CEO compared to being, the head of eng or the head of sales?
It's slightly more existential. I think it's like one of the things I should appreciate when I was a VP of sales, for example, was I really, really just tried to do I tried to stay in my lane and do the best in my lane that I could. And I was just like blindly trusting everyone else in the team. But if I could go back in time, actually, I would have been like, don't let your title like bottleneck you into just caring about your part of the business. If you really believe something else could be fixed, even though that might seem annoying, it might not be what everyone wants to hear from you.
Right.
Yeah. I think what advice do I have? I think being for me, I'm really glad that I have worked at a bunch of small companies. It just makes it way easier. I think, for example, you would be in for the shock of your life if you're like VP of Eng or something at Google or a huge organization. But if you've been in a remotely senior role at like a startup, I think you kind of more or less know what you're getting into because it would have been so broad what you're working on anyway. So yeah, I think if I can do it, anyone can do it would to be the too long didn't read.
Yes. Yeah. Same. Yeah. Same experience having kind of gone through all that. I don't know. I feel like so many people get into it that, you don't know what you're doing, but it's a lot of problem solving. It's, what's the next thing? Sure, I don't know how to do it, but I know how to learn how to do things. And I'm just going to kind of keep tackling the next thing for sure.
Yeah, I do think a lot of people also, even if you're doing something like if you're running engineering and you're interested in it, you don't really, I think people don't appreciate how much sales experience you get as a leader in a company, for example. So you would have been doing a bunch of sales anyway. And I think the magic for me has been being reasonably good at more than one thing. I mean, you start, I'm kind of I don't know, for me, it's been very, very useful. It's been much easier than I would have expected to do multiple things at once. Even though I'm a really bad developer. And as a result, I basically end up doing our go-to-market at Postdog in the early days. I did all of our early sales around the sales team and with our customer success team, whatever. And our marketing, I did quite a bit with design on our website. But recently this year, I started managing 3 of our engineering teams and gave our little sales team over to my co-founder, who was the CTO, and basically it's just a developer by background. But our growth rate has increased significantly because we realized actually the problem we had at that point was it's not so much doing hand-to-hand combat. It's more about building a machine. And a developer might be much better at that than someone who's a bit salesier kind of individually.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. I love that. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. I read that switching gears here. I read that you guys pivoted 5 times in the first 6 months of the company before landing on Posthog. Tell me, what's the story there?
Sure. So there are definitely some pretty cool startup founders. There's one guy who did 12 startups in 12 months or something. And we were not deliberately trying to basically do that. So my co-founder and I started off working together, and we really ruthlessly were willing to throw away work that we'd put out in the early days when we were pre-product market. So and the first tool we worked on, I had this list of problems that I'd encountered in my professional life. And I was like, oh, cool, I should try and solve some of these when I eventually run my own thing. So I set off building a tool for sales leaders, the place to be one. And we got 15 VPs of sales wanting to try this product we'd built that would automatically manage the sales territory. And I was like, great, this is so perfect. We're going to launch it. Then hopefully 5 or 6 of them use it and pay for it. And then we're off the races. But what happened was we had 15 of them super enthusiastically saying they're going to use it, sent the link out for them to create their account. And only one made it past the create a password page. So yeah, we had like a series of like complete failures like that.
Yeah.
The thing that happened though along the way was every single time we had to pivot, we were just getting frustrated setting up a stack of tools to understand our product usage. And we're like, you know what? Like that problem would be a lot of fun to solve. And that's how I solved the problem.
Yeah. Do you think some of those failures around kind of like the story with the sales leaders, was that just kind of doing bad discovery work? Maybe you're asking leading questions, you're, hearing what you want to hear, or
I think partially, but not just. So there is like a bit of the mom test that I wish I'd read.
Yes.
Although I am also a believer that you can only validate. I mean, like the guy from Basecamp has again, that's like, you may or may not like everything he says on the internet, but like one of the things he came out with that I did actually agree with was you can't you can't validate stuff in advance totally, which I have definitely seen. But like no matter how good a job you try to do with this stuff, I think the proof is in the pudding. So we kind of made sure that like one of us was constantly, my job was getting meetings with potential users and getting feedback and kind of everything random as well. And my co-founder's job was exclusive writing code. And so we just built this machine that was designed to like, okay, I'm trying to like be ahead of him a little bit in terms of which direction he should build it on, kind of like the product person. And he's coding as quickly as he can. And our goal was usually within like a couple of days or even a week and have something that people could log into. So just getting extremely quick, like churning out the MVP and just testing it and seeing if people are actually going to use it. I mean, it skips, like you spend months validating an idea very badly and only getting to like 30% certainty. It kind of felt like, okay, we can get to 100% if one of us just build it. Well, and we may well have to throw it away as a result sometimes. So yeah, I really think we really kind of, I guess, thought of the company like a product almost, and it like a product that's designed to quickly take lots of shots on goal. And then we'll sort of find out like which soccer, like which kind of sport, whatever, is the one that we're like roughly good at. And then we'll go really deep on that one. So yeah, a little bit of like getting a sense of what, like, and it also lets you find out if you enjoy stuff as well. Like, they say like, oh, you're going to be working this thing for 10 years. You should think really carefully. But also like once you try an idea, that's kind of how you discover if you like it or not too. Yeah. So again, like sometimes you founders who are like debating, well, am I going to want to do 10 years of this thing? Like just try it for like a month or two. Like you can always change that. Like one of our ideas, we had found a problem. We had hundreds of users. We wound up pivoting because we couldn't sell it. And we realized we had to rebuild the product from scratch and we just didn't want to. But we tried the space for like a month or two and then just knew it wasn't for us. Just wasn't better than we ever would have guessed. In advance.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a tough pill to swallow, I think. And I mean, honestly, I think it's true for a lot of startups that like sometimes the minimum like viable product is like the product. It's not like some little thing that you can like, I don't know, talk about and like really learn about. Sometimes you just gotta like build it and see like, do people actually use it? Get it? I know the mom test is great, but like, I think for new products, it can be really hard to take people at their word and like, and I feel like they also often give, people give like overly optimistic answers about like what their future behavior will be. Like they just, I don't know, we just default to telling people what they want to hear a little too much. Anyway, okay, super interesting. One other question around that is, how do you know, I mean, you guys pivoted a lot of times, like how, did you have any, like, I guess the one where you had maybe 100 users, you were thinking about rebuilding it, but didn't, but kind of outside of that, like, how do you know, when is it a good time to pivot? Like if things are close, you have some traction, how do you know when to pivot?
So I'm actually writing like a mini book on this topic at the moment, like a content project. But I'll give you a really boring answer. It depends. I think basically I think there's several steps that you need to get over in order. Step one is come up with an idea. Step two, see if anyone will even talk to you about it. Step three, will they use it once? Step four, will they use it again? And step five, are they willing to pay for it? And once you can get like kind of around 5 paying customers, it'll get more obvious if you've got product market fit. I think if you're at the point where you're kind of questioning heavily, if no one's willing to talk to you in the first place, you're either being super unclear or the problem's not there. So clarify what you're saying or start over. If you're getting further along and like users are using it, but they're not willing, like they'll use it once, but not come back, like the product probably sucks, like maybe rebuild the product from scratch. If they're using it repeatedly, but they're not paying, like also you're probably not really solving a problem or the problem's just very low value, like the problem's just very low value. So I think it depends a bit on the failure point. Generically, I think if you spent like a couple of weeks, like really questioning existentially if you should pivot, you definitely should have already pivoted, I think is the answer. A bit like if you're, like, should I quit my job or something? Like the fact you're having that conversation already demonstrates because of like loss aversion in your psychology. So apart from us, we need to be like pretty willing to get rid of stuff. So yeah, unless you're like pretty extreme, I think most people, if you're questioning it, you probably should just pivot.
Okay. Good. Okay. Good advice. Love that. Okay. So funnily enough, you guys landed on Posthog. Product analytics, super competitive space,
Yep.
Mixpanel, Amplitude, all these data warehouse and ETL things going on. It's kind of funny that you pivoted, from so many things into a space that's so competitive. Talk to me about that.
Sure. So it made it a lot easier, if I'm honest.
Dude.
It had like a pre-existing bunch of solutions out there.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of already know that there's going to be you already know there's a problem because they've got product market fit. And then the question is like, how do I make my solution much better? But I think that is actually a much less existential place to be than like, is it even a problem in the first place? So if you think of getting product market fit like a multivariate problem, you want as few variables as like the more variables, you get exponentially more complicated to solve. So in fact, I'd argue your chances of getting product market fit in a market that is very busy are way higher. And I also think it's way simpler. And we just differentiated really heavily. Like we built for a technical audience instead of a non-technical PM audience. We have this concept of like product engineers, maybe engineers who decide what to build versus engineers that follow orders from product. And we kind of built for that crowd really heavily. And we've been like increasingly confident in that as we've got going. So yeah, I've never really worked in something that is quite this. Well, I suppose I have a while ago. But my last startup, to give a counter example, we were selling a Casco product that didn't really exist. We just made it like a living nightmare to generate demand in the first place. There's this huge like education process. It's very salesy. You kind of have to like really, really, really work to build up demand. Whereas we basically found, like, I swear to God, like basically if you see a market pretty busy and everyone else has just even got like no pricing information, no pricing page, if you just build the one that has pricing information on there and you make it self-serve, you'll probably pick up like $1 million of revenue a year easily from people who just don't want to like deal with salespeople. For example, it actually made it a lot of fun and it made it really entertaining. Like, okay, how can we beat people here? It's like a little bit competitive versus like, oh God, like it's just probably a problem in the first place.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's super interesting. I love that. Okay. Switching gears a little bit. I want to talk to you guys a little bit just kind of about your process in figuring out what you're going to work on next. Talk to me about maybe kind of the last big like tentpole feature you guys launched and how did you guys decide you were going to do that? And then everything that happened after that.
Sure. So one of our company values is we haven't built our defining feature yet. So we're kind of building really wide. We're trying to build like an entire set of tools into one platform. And we've kind of always had this propensity to be like, it's the next thing, it's the next thing, it's the next thing. The last big feature we built, so we started with product analytics, we built session recording, and more recently we built kind of feature flagging and experimentation in, which kind of let you measured your product performance, you've diagnosed it, and now you're trying to release changes to improve it. We put in a little bit of work to get everything to kind of parity with the like siloed product that exists in the market. Now we're at the point where we're trying to do like a huge push on our UI and UX to integrate all of the things together. And because we think combined are way more powerful, and we're trying to make the interface a bit more developer centric. I think our current product is to use hyperbole, but we think it's a little bit Fisher Price. And we have a really technical audience. So we're also working on like, okay, let's like push on this ideal customer profile that we have. This differentiates us more and more heavily. And then through this year, we're looking at building a more complete kind of customer data platform and probably an ETL sort of solution next. And then we're debating currently like a year away from now, plus like, do we ship a warehouse or whatever? So that's the bit that's like a bit fun for us at the moment.
Yeah. How do you guys decide to do those things? Like, I'm sure you're measuring, building feature flagging up against 100 other things. How do you decide that?
Yeah. So this is something that's really changed from when we were early to today. In the early days, I was incredibly anti-product. I think I've had bad experiences and scar tissue around this. So technically we just let engineers have complete autonomy. Like, hey, like we're trying to help increase the number of successful products in the world. We've started off with open source product analytics. Like, what do you want to build next? It's up to you as an engineer. We hired there are a couple of things we did that made that work much better than you would expect. We have generally quite senior people working here who can cope with a lot of autonomy pretty well. And we have a huge amount of written, transparent communication online. Like we have a whole company handbook is on the internet. You can see how much we pay people, when we let people go, our company mission, strategy, the whole lot is there. And so they kind of have all this context over what's going on too. And we just sort of trusted them. When we got to about 15 people, and I thought this is wonderful. Like it's completely non-bureaucratic. We've got our engineers directly dealing with other engineers. It's like lovely to watch. When we got to about 15 people, our own engineers were like, we need a bit more direction. This is kind of chaotic. Can we please hire like a product manager? So we hired like a really technical product manager and eventually hired like a product leader. And it made an unbelievable difference when we decided to build a paid product out. We just started, it was so much more focused. And we basically managed to get a product market fit for a paid product. It put us in a way stronger position as a company. He did it in a way that really empowered people to load the work off their plates. And I'm just really grateful that we did that. So I think that early days, you do have to be really flexible. It's largely driven by user, like really directly what users were asking for. Basically, often when I thought X and users were asking for Y was like 5 times like to be the right thing. So you have to like downweight your ego compared to what like several users might be asking for. We have like a roadmap. So all of our stuff is public. Like we have issues for things we're thinking of building. And we even like, even on the homepage of our website, we list a roadmap that we like flux based on, we like change based on what people are asking for. They can upvote, downvote stuff. That weighed in very heavily into our decision making. Now we're a bit later stage. We're just starting to plan way further out. It's funny, but once you start getting more traction, you start being able to see around corners a little bit because you just have so much more. You can kind of see the market better because you've got like hundreds or like, we have like 23,000 companies or something using our product now. And you can just sort of get a much better sense. So we've been a lot savvier. We've started looking at like how the company's data stacks evolve over time. We're asking ourselves questions like, how can we compete with Snowflake or the like massive data warehouses? That's really what we're competitive with in our heads, not so much product analytics. And we think we can just obviate the need for them completely by focusing on companies that don't have them yet and just trying to provide every single tool that a startup would need and just growing with them. And in the short run, we'll lose them eventually. Like they'll move to a warehouse and just use us for like, not as their warehouse, but all the other stuff. So just in the short run, provide extensibility and the ability to export. In the long run, to replace more and more of the tooling and plan. And it's a simpler experience for our customers. Like we go through the pain once of setting up this like huge data stack, which means that tens of thousands of other companies, like it's like a couple of clicks and a code snippet and you're up and running with everything that you could need. So you're not spending money on data engineering, you're spending it on making your product successful.
Yeah. Talk to me about some of the signs that you were ready to hire kind of a product leader there. What was breaking down?
Basically, engineers asking for it, I think was the most important thing. If they hadn't asked for it, we'd have kept going to probably 30 people. What
was happening that they were asking for it?
I think the product was just very large at this point. Like there was kind of I think the kind of thing to think like we had a complete flat org structure as well at 15. And we're finding that there wasn't really proper ownership of the product. So at this point, people have such a wide area that they could work on that they don't really feel like they own it in particular. So it means things like bugs that happen. No one like, holy shit, like my part, sorry, I don't know if I was back. I just did.
Go for it. Yep.
They're like, holy shit, like a user is like getting stuck on something that's like my thing. So one of the other changes we made around that kind of time is we started working in small multidisciplinary teams inspired by like Jeff Lawson has a book on this topic. Ask a developer, Jeff Lawson from Twilio has written a book a little bit that covers this topic.
Yep.
Amazon AWS is structured like this internally. The content that you have like up to 6 people, no more, fully own part of the product and they treat that as their own product. So they kind of have autonomy in that group to ship into production without outside interference. It's kind of the goal. And so we kind of found, okay, what we're not going to do is dictate to like an individual, Joe Blogs, please build X, but we'll give to the team, like, hey, in your team, we think these are the things, these are the problems that need solving that we've kind of worked on with you. And then it's kind of up to the team to manipulate a bit, sprint by sprint, what they ship. And it's driven by, it's very engineering led still. But we have steered like longer direction, much more clearly. Like product formed a long-term opinion. And then engineering are like roughly trying to like swim in that direction, but they might go to the side of it, like totally stupid to not do that because of like technical debt or whatever the reason may be. It's like a little bit awkward. It's probably like 90% total decision making by engineering and 10% like coaching and steering from product. It's very much product working for engineering, not the other way around too.
Yeah. How do you, in a lot of companies, engineering, especially as companies grow, engineering gets further and further away from like direct interaction with customers. How do you try and like make sure that doesn't happen?
Sure, quite a few things. One, if they're trying to decide what to build, it's pretty hard to do that with no interaction. So, it's kind of like, okay, as long as that you're actually empowering them properly, like you can't say you're doing that and not have them deal with customers at all. And like, we'll get part of product's role. For example, we brought a product leader in, and a part of his job is like, we want a culture of our engineers talking to users, like a core part of like what success looks like in the long term here. It's just that it's happening on a very regular basis. With engineers, we talk about closing the loop, which is like one thing to build something. It's much more impressive to build something that people want. So when you ship something, like go back to users that are interested in it, give them the pull request or the feature and behind a feature flag, get feedback from them, deal with the feedback as well, like raise an issue, say no, ship something, go back to the user again. And in one fell swoop, you improve your product. You like blow the mind of people in the community who go out and tell their friends. Like all our growth comes from word of mouth. And the other part is content marketing. We do literally no outbound sales, and we're doing like $4 million a year in revenue. And you want to train your users. Thirdly, you train users like to give you more feedback so you can go faster, because you're showing that like you're actually listening to this feedback and you're playing back to them with stuff that there's actually a point in them giving it in the first place. So we've tried quite hard to do that. I think the second thing that like one is sort of trying just really caring about that culture. I think the second is like, even from a support perspective, again, we have like 0,000 developers or something in our community, like 23,000 companies. We have no support people between our engineers and our entire like user base. And we just rotate our engineers. We do like a support hero thing where one engineer handles literally all of the literally all of the questions from their community each week. They may end up passing them to like the relevant team if they can't answer it, but they'll handle probably 80 or 90% of them directly themselves. And our purpose with this is it means that our engineers directly build all of the customer frustration or pain or whatever. And we're hoping that it means we can just like repeat productize solutions to all of the problems that are happening. We've been doing it since day one. It's scaled to like tens of thousands of users. Like we have 4,000 people in like a community Slack group, for example, as well. And I think like your intuition is we should get a non-technical person to like triage this stuff, but it didn't end up in engineering's lap anyway. So you just create inefficiency, and now you're investing it. Like I'd rather hire another developer than a support person that can't ship code. So we're faster. So like really trying to double down on the product side of the company. I've seen the opposite happening where I've worked before, where we would hire these like amazing support people or project managers or whatever that would just like calm customers down, lower their expectations, blah, 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 blah. But like we're investing a ton of money in that stuff. It's just like a shortcut not a shortcut. It's kind of like, it's like going to McDonald's. Like, yes, that probably builds a little bit better in the short run and it builds a bit smoother. But the reality is very bad for you in the long run if you do a lot. So we've really been disciplined with like, we want as much of our capital as possible go into shipping software and as little as possible everywhere else, because that means we can just build a big kind of product advantage and moat that makes us a better choice for users to pick.
Yes. Yep. And so for you guys, with one engineer, you're able to pretty much handle the entire support load for a week. Sure, they're passing some stuff off.
Just about,
It's
hard. We track things like how many users ask. Like last year, for example, we had double the number of support questions, but a given user was 75% less likely to ask a question. It's just we had a lot of user growth at the same time. It's like very gradual. So maybe we need 2 engineers like at some point this year. But like we're trying to monitor like what the propensity of a given user is to ask a question and trying to keep that roughly flat is kind of what we're seeing.
Right. Yeah. I would expect your internal tools and your kind of enablement within the product just has to be so mature to be able to kind of do that.
Yeah, they could be better still. Like they're still not perfect, but like we can put work into them. Like we're willing to ship. Like we actually, like for example, we built a tool that integrates like Stack Overflow that integrates with documentation. So users can even ask a question like directly on a page of your docs. So that content gets indexed rather than being ephemeral and like disappearing off into Slack. So we have done some work like that to try and get like a lot of stuff out into the docs, or just to simplify the product experience where it's confusing people. So there are like a whole bunch of ways. It's sort of like a problem you have to tackle from like a system perspective, but also considering like your website, your documentation as products, and having it also trying to make the core product simpler to use or less buggy or whatever it may be.
Yeah. How do you as the CEO stay close to customers?
I'm just like connected to like I get all of the emails that go to us, like any kind of support email, I get all of them, which is like, I mean, I don't know how many a day we probably get. Probably whether like 20, 30 questions a day or something. I see like all of that stuff happening. I think I could do more of this, frankly. Like we've started going on, like I'm going on a trip to like the West Coast US. I'm going to like book, I'm meeting a bunch of customers there. So just like making a little bit of time for it. I honestly think I'm not the greatest at this sometimes. I read every single piece of customer feedback we get. I watch all our brand mentions. So I'm quite close to it online. I think frankly, I sometimes don't do enough of it in person. I did do all of our early sales as well. Like until we're at like 500,000, 600,000 in revenue or something too. I did find myself to kind of force me to figure out what people actually needed from a sales perspective. So yeah, I have sort of been a bit of everywhere in the company basically.
Yeah. Sales for you guys is more of like inbound sales. Like you don't really do outbound sales, right? So it's kind of like
100%. Yeah, 100% inbound. Yeah.
Yep. Do you have any internal salespeople now, or how does that work at PostHog?
We have 2 people that I frame as customer success, and they're both engineers. By background, like one of them had never been in a sales role before. In the process of me doing the first, like, is you advice like do $500,000, $1 million a year in revenue before you get me salespeople. I also like, what do customers, what do they care about when they're dealing with me? And the answer is like, they have a lot of technical questions, and they also need to know that I need to be credible when I'm talking to them. And if I just like say dumb stuff because I don't understand software, like I just know that they're not going to want to talk to me. It's going to be really hard. They're not going to be responsive. So I think my tip really there is consider your go-to-market a product. Like most people will blindly hire a bunch of like SDRs, account execs, not just copy paste their go-to-market playbook when they put all the time and care in the world into their product. But like we just really built our go-to-market around our audience and just did like, well, what would I want as a developer? What would make me most likely to buy something or to use it or whatever in the first place? I think the second thing with like an inbound type strategy like that is it does take a bit of time. So just make sure you're well capitalized relative to your burn rate is quite important. So I raised like quite a lot of money in the first like 6-7 months of the company's life. But then we kept our spend relatively low ever since, as we've been like gradually finding like product market fit in product and now scaling up our revenue growth.
Yeah. If you don't have outbound sales, like what do you spend money on? As you talk about scaling that up?
Yeah, I mean, the amazing thing is like the big picture really for outbound sales is like you're going to send like 10, like every 100 emails, you might like 1,000 emails, you might get one sale. So you're investing money and spending 999 emails for no reason, and you're wasting like nearly 100% of that work. And it can often be 50 or 60% of the company's spend. So we kind of felt if we can avoid that, we will build something much more leveraged because everyone is building something that's like kind of permanent on the internet. So how can we find a way to do this? I also learned that like a bunch of other open source companies have got to like 10 million run rate with no outbound sales too. So we thought, hey, we should be able to pull this off. It is much more efficient in the go-to-market once it starts working. It takes a lot of faith in the early days because it's quite rare. The downside is also that it's a little bit more intellectually challenging. Like, how do I scale? Like, how do I show up with how do I, with sales reps, at least you have like, once you've got product market fit, you'd be like, okay, each person achieves 70% of their quota. I get whatever, $500,000 a year of each sales executive. I need like one video, whatever. They're just like math. Whereas for this kind of growth, you've got these like huge levers, but they're just in like fog. So you're trying to work out like, where are they? Like, what can I put on here? And like, we started realizing, okay, like SEO and like brand oriented content works really well for us.
Yeah.
And every time we make the product wider or we make the product deeper, we get more word of mouth growth and our retention clients too. Yep. So that's pretty much it.
I was going to say, yeah, it sounds like a pretty big leap of faith that, hey, just the more we work on the better product we have, the more word of mouth we're going to get. And that's going to be, sounds like maybe that's the primary way you guys grow.
Yep. Yeah. It's kind of, we could feel it happening though from like reasonably early on, like it's sort of maybe 6 months. The key to that also has been like, we built the open source project, it's free, but we always had like a paid product listed on the website. So we're always trying to get like signal through our website on what people want to buy from us. So if you're building something like free and then converts users into a paid version, like just, you can learn a lot from the signal you get from the website. It's the same thing with like, we have this big debate internally around like, how much should we focus on self-host versus cloud usage of our product? And initially we thought self-host because of it was very different to what everyone else was doing. We thought big companies will need self-host this thing. We kind of, on a whim, set up a cloud version of our product once because some customers needed it because they were struggling to host it themselves. And then we made it generally available to other users on a whim. And then we realized one day, like, oh my God, we're going to have like tons of usage in cloud, but we never expected this because of competition. But it just turned out that like competition is not that big a deal, probably because we're dealing with very technical people rather than regular product managers. And then our cloud version, we went from like, 50-50 revenue split between cloud and self-host. And now we're like 90% in climbing cloud-based revenue. So we had like several lessons like that we wouldn't have expected, but we only got them because we just put ourselves on the internet and explain what we're trying to do properly. And we, we're willing to like work in the open and put ourselves out there.
Yeah. Switching gears a bit, do you have any kind of like formal process for thinking about, defining, communicating your, several years vision for the company?
Yes, I would say so. We have a mission, vision, and then OKRs that kind of follow those things. So like our mission is to increase the number of successful products in the world. Our vision is like kind of 5 years out from now, what we want to achieve. The thing with that sounded to me initially like a lot of like words. Will these actually make an impact on our company's performance? It'd been very surprising actually how often I hear all of the stuff referenced about.
Yeah, tell me more.
As we've got bigger, like we're at about 40 people at the moment. Increasingly, like our engineers are asking for like, can we have more clarity over our like 1 year out from now? Not just, we don't want to wait like 5 years. We kind of want to know over the next year or so what we're thinking, because it makes it way easier then to pick things like OKRs. So I'm trying to like make a bigger deal, like more and more clarity longer term makes kind of picking the right OKRs way simpler. Whereas when you've got like a slightly vague, aspirational like mission statement, a vision statement even, your OKRs, you're going to be like quite dramatically questioning your entire existence every time you define your OKRs potentially. And so we kind of found it's sort of learning that actually like putting more work than you'd expect you'd need to long term makes all the short term planning way simpler. But that's something that has more occurred to me this year as we've got a bit more serious around.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you say the kind of like right cadences to hit are like your long-term vision and your 1 year vision then, or am I hearing that right?
So I think that all three of them has been useful. Like, for example, our mission statement is to increase the number of successful products in the world. Every single person in the company will be able to tell you this. And part of the vision statement from a product perspective 5 years out actually has felt kind of vague and probably not as useful. And one thing that's interesting though is we put output that we wanted. Like, we're not, for example, we were like, okay, we want to get 100 million in revenue by the end of 2026. That would allow us to go public to do so. And that had like totally stuck in people's heads. They're like, okay, like go IPO or go home, basically. Like just a small thing like that. Like and again, we have publicly written this on our website. And like, okay, like working back from there, we need to hit like, I did this like a year ago. We're like, okay, we need to hit 9% month-over-month growth to hit that. So let's just make sure it's over 9% every month. And like, it's made us really focused on our monthly growth rate and made sure it's like worked on making sure it's compounding and stuff. It's been really useful. And it's also set like it's been an interesting way of like, I think you can say to people all you want, like your options are going to be worth like $1 gazillion or whatever. But if you just say like, okay, look, we want to kind of go public over this time frame, it's just obvious you'll make a bunch of money if you're an employee here with equity at this stage and we get there. So let's just do this as like a kind of career milestone for a lot of people. So it's a good way of like tapping in like a personal thing for people too. But yeah, roadmap wise, we're kind of finding like realistically, like around a year away from now and our current size is kind of where we need to focus. It used to be like 3 months. Back in the earliest days, it was like, what are we going to build this week? And even what are we going to build today?
Of course, yeah.
So that's like gradually moved out.
Yeah.
As we've got more clarity.
Yeah. Getting to 100 million, in revenue. I mean, there's so many different ways you could potentially get there. What level of fidelity do you try to give on like, and specifically, I think our best way of kind of competing is, this direction or this direction, like how much. Sure. Does that question make sense? Like, how specific around the product direction do you get?
Yeah. So we have laid out how we think things will feel at that stage. So like, we think the majority of that is going to be coming from high growth startups like Series B, C, D, basically people that have hit product market fit and fundraise. And we think we'll have a massive amount of adoption upstream of that in like seed Series A companies. And we think it's going to come still primarily from product engineers, like not other stakeholders. So we have sort of talked about like, if this is the kind of profile this is the part of the market that we're pretty sure that will come from. This is like the ideal customer profile that we have. So yeah, we have been really quite specific with what we expect. We don't change it. Like the mission won't change, but like the vision stuff, one level down like this, I think we will potentially fluctuate a bit depending on what we learn.
Yeah.
But it does sort of set out like, okay, for example, like on our pricing page, it's like, should we have like an enterprise option? And like, at least there's a debate now. Like, I think a lot of companies will just default saying, yes, we should. And then we'll charge a ridiculous amount of money if the enterprise comes in. But like here, we will genuinely debate, like, should we even bother putting this on there? Because it's not really our focus. Like, we don't want to work with companies that put us through complex procurement instead of our top on the top end, because frankly, they are almost 0% of our revenue at the moment. So why would we put more effort in at this point? So yeah, if you think like that, to try and help people make good short term. If you want like a lot of autonomy in your culture, it should be more specific long term, what you're aiming for, and give them the context they will need to make decisions autonomously. That's sort of the value of this stuff. And that also works well with an asynchronous culture, where everything's like written out, and in a culture where you're hiring people that, you know, are quite wide in their skill set and they're usually reasonably experienced and they want to work in an environment where there's not a ton of control. So they can sort of make good short-term decisions. Like I think, yeah, the outcome of doing a good job of your long-term planning is all of the day-to-day decisions are just a lot easier for people to take, and you don't have as much like synchronization and back and forth over every small thing you try and get done.
Whose responsibility is that kind of like 1 to 2 year vision for the product? Is that you? Is that the product leader you've hired, or how do you think about that?
I still think that's basically me in my current state, but like ultimately it's my problem, but I'm heavily working with our product to pull this off. So the two of us are collaborating, but like I really deeply care about what that is at this stage of our life. I think because we're trying to focus on it heavily, I wouldn't surprise if I back out of that at some point. Like I think if you had like a C-level kind of person doing products, maybe that would be that person's responsibility. But our current size, we don't have that. So I think that's kind of why. And also I think frankly, in the early days, I think it just should be quite founder driven.
Yeah. Talk to me more about that. Was it always the case that this vision should kind of come from the product person, or at what point can the founder not hand off the reins, but like relinquish some control on that product vision?
Sure. So I think we have actually done it. Like we sort of did this, and then I've like taken over, like I've started managing a couple of the engineering teams because we realized like we're actually letting go kind of somewhat prematurely here. So I basically, you probably do that if you've got like total clarity over how you think stuff is going to pan out. But honestly, as a digital person, like I just didn't until like, I think recently I don't think we have got this totally 100% yet at this stage. I think we're now very clear, but like, unless you are truly confident that you know what you're going to be shipping, like 4 or 5 years from now, how that's going to feel, like it's probably still your problem at that point. I think that perhaps if you don't do that, you'll end up in a local maximum where I think a product person is like fundamentally a bit more constrained, even if they're like super senior or whatever, than a founder really is. And so I think if you want to like do a superb job of executing a plan, like a product person will really make that happen, probably much better than a founder would. Maybe they'll be like more organized. They kind of know how to work with teams better. They can coordinate complex projects better. They're a bit more focused on it because they don't have like random miscellaneous stuff happening. But I think the impact for Postdoc, for example, would have been like, they would hire like some C-level or some senior level product person. I just kind of feel like we would have wound up building just open source, like just product analytics. So we wouldn't ever have gone wide, which looked really stupid to like loads of people. Like no one thinks you can build like 5 products in one, or it's very unusual when we decide to do it. And I think we would have had like a much more conventional playbook of like, okay, cool. And like we started big enterprises that need to sell post, and now we're worth like $1 or $2 billion. And now we're like kind of capping out. Whereas I think what we're working on now, like I'm just trying to get up level ambition. It'll be much harder what we're trying to do. But I think it's kind of like, okay, we're trying to, like, we're not really motivated by just beating the product analytics companies out there. Like we're trying to work out how to build companies in like tens of billions of dollars kind of size and impact. So it's for that sort of reason. Like I just felt like we hadn't found our rail in the right place.
Yeah. Okay. Why do you think that is about you said something about finding a local maximum because a product person tends to be more constrained. Why do you think that happens?
So I think maybe like 2 ways that this could work. I think one is either you hire someone that's just, I know there are product people that would want to completely change your strategy, who would push you out of a local maximum, and that would be great. But I think frankly, I would just not have managed to like trust someone to like entirely drive us in a different direction to what we thought. So I just would have in practice found it really hard to collaborate with them. Like when we hired a product leader, we hired someone that like, we were like, okay, we need to be able to trust this person like as much as humanly possible. But we don't think someone who's got like 15 years experience is someone we will actually manage to build. I don't know. I'm not articulating this very well. I think I wasn't ready to let go because I think like the heart and soul of the company, like we're a completely product led company. And like what our growth comes from like bottom up adoption and through the product itself. But like we don't do any outbound sales. Like we don't really do any like like our marketing is just sort of content based around transparency or building a company, basically. I just think that kind of is our soul, like caring about like the product that you're working on. So I think that's probably like why for us in particular. I think if we were doing something really different, like if we're like an enterprise software company where you're like sales led, this would perhaps there needs something that you can delegate way more easily. You can just blindly trust someone. But I think if your company, like real, like we're trying to increase the number of successful products in the world too, like I think we just care too much about the style of product that we build to be it hardly determines our fortune. And so for us, it's probably the most leveraged. It is the most leveraged thing that we can be working on too. And so it just felt like really tough to hand over. I mean, I'm sure it could have been possible, but like I think it would have struggled to build because of how leveraged it is. It would be such a high risk of bringing an external person in to totally handle products.
Right.
That I would have really struggled. So like we wound up going with someone that was relatively inexperienced, but just ridiculously smart and hardworking, and someone that like I really deeply trusted. That's like quite a close friend from like a YC batch. You know, we're looking at like the other people we're looking at in the recruitment process were like very impressive on paper, but I think I just wouldn't have had the same sort of bond with them that I have with Luke, which is I think is producing a better output for us and basically taking two of us to get it done rather than one. But it's so leveraged, like very efficient. Sorry, that was a very wordy answer.
No, it's great. I mean, I think it's such an important, takeaway that, as CEO, it's your job to be working on the highest leverage thing. This is the future of your company. And if it's not the right time eventually, yes, CEOs have to you got to give away your toys so you can kind of focus more on other things, more company building things. But now, while you're still young, while this is still the most important thing for you, I think that makes complete sense for sure. Okay, one last thing, switch gears a little bit. If you look at the Posthog product updates page, one of the things that seemed to be a recurring theme for the past year was around performance enhancements. How do you think about balancing performance enhancements versus improvements to features versus taking on like net new functionality?
Performance has been the most wildly complicated part of our development. Like when we're thinking about building Posthog in the first place, we're doing like Y Combinator, and we had this batch. We had this partner called Dalton Caldwell. He's like, are you sure you want to like do this? Like product analytics is really hard to build. Like in particular, it's very difficult from a technical perspective. Of course, we're both like, yep, it's gonna be fine. Reduce the features before. Yeah, it was like mind-blowing painful. Like we launched with like the Postgres and Sun database on Hacker News, and then within 4 weeks, we'd already like the limits of what we thought was possible with Postgres. We're tracking like an awful lot of like it is a significant portion of the world population tracked by our software now, and so we kind of totally ongoing work. We have the team like in our product, for example, what's really interesting. Like we have a session recording team, a product analytics team, and so on. Our session recording. We have 23,000 companies using us. Our session recording team is 2 people. Like, and like our competitors have like 100 working on just that. But the reason we're able to get away with that is we have an infrastructure team, and it's still not huge, but like 5 or 6 people, 6 people-ish, 5 people at the moment. But then we also have like a pipeline team that work with like ingesting all the event volume. So we have an ongoing significant investment in performance that will never ever die because the volumes just keep going up and up and up. So you never ever feel like you're on top of it. Yeah, I think we underinvested in it in the early days as well. Like we had basically one guy doing all of it. And so we got into like, I think because we're getting so much growth, like we should have just probably spent a bit more money there. Frankly, as founders, neither of us have infrastructure experience either. And so also an unknown on top. So while it would have been stupid to build the like product we launched on anything other than Postgres, but it would have just added like the early days, all you care about is does anyone care? So it would be really dumb to build something more scalable then. But like when we knew that was a problem, we should have done that. Like it was very obviously going to continuously be a problem. So we should have just like done that sooner. In terms of new features, the way we basically prioritize this, we used to jump around all over the place, and that would basically result in like we'd ship X and then we'd ship Y and then Z, and then like X is hideously broken by the time you've got onto Z and you don't really care about X because everyone's heads are focusing on the new thing. We shifted this small team structure to give like kind of semi-permanent ownership of like, 2 to 6 people of part of our product. So now in product analytics, if there's a bug or something, it's like, this is my baby, one of our team, everyone in that people feel. And that we just find that then we're better at dealing with little bugs and stuff as they come along. We give engineering autonomy. So if they're like, they will feel user pain, they'll just fix stuff. And if they know that it's causing lots of problems, rather than shipping like their OKRs, for example, which we're happy with. In terms of new features, I think the way this will sort of end up panning out for us is like, we want to go wider still than we are today. And as we just continue to raise money, it's like, cool, this allows us to also, it's like the building blocks for how we'd invest. It's all like, cool, we want like CDP. We put like 2 people on it initially, and we'd expand it to 6 as it gets more usage. I mean, you can't have 6 people working on a new thing anyway, because they'll just get in each other's way. But we will need, so product analytics, we have 6 people on it at the moment because it's the most used part of the product. And we found that like, okay, more people in that team means we can just maintain a higher quality standard. But yeah, the early days is like 2 people, MVP, just needs to functionally work, ship it to you by the feature flag, gradually do the rollout, and then gradually increase that team size and start getting more traction for it. It's sort of been our method. So using small teams as building blocks has worked great for this stuff.
Do you try and keep, I don't know, any like almost like percentages around like, oh, we want to spend 20% of our time on performance stuff, 30% of our time on improvements, 50% of our time on net new features? Or is it just kind of whatever customers are saying lately?
Yeah. So not that formally, but there just is I mean, I could easily, I can tell you roughly what the percentages would be off the top of my head because I know how many teams we have in each thing. And like, we do have a balanced approach to this. Like, we will have 2 teams, like, working on infrastructure, that stuff. We have 3 teams working on kind of feature development, and then a couple of supporting teams, like doing marketing and customer success. So yeah, implicitly, we do have a bit of balance. So before, when we were trying to get some product market fit, to tell you a story the other way around, that wasn't the right approach for us. We felt that like, we've got to be more focused. So at one point we kind of realized, okay, we've got like all these users on this open source project we built, but we want to get a paid product working, and we just like have demand for it. And we kind of concluded like, okay, we just need to do a better job of some of our existing functionality here. Like, we have like we have concepts of funnels where you can look at like conversion rates, whatever. And it turned out that all the customers that had budgets and stuff and fit this profile that we thought we should be selling to, and that seemed to be moving forward in the sales cycle the most easily, all of them wanted more depth of functionality in funnels. And so we literally had strategy that was nail funnels. And every single person in the company basically just made sure our funnels functionality worked really, really well. I mean, through the whole company at it. We got 5 reference customers. And once that had started happening, we saw the number of customers, climbing into the like hundreds of paying customers, whatever. And then we realized, okay, now we need to distribute across everything more evenly. In the process of doing that, like, so many bits have got broken in the meantime because we just not cared about them. And there's like more and more volume coming in now. It took like a couple of months to achieve that. So yeah, I think pre-product market fit, like, you can throw the whole company, whereas like our whole job here is just to get the like thing done, probably fine. But once you've got like, okay, now we're trying to scale our revenue growth instead, like, I think that we do need a more balanced approach to this stuff. And so yeah, I think it's like wish like that line that you can on at any given time.
Okay. Well, okay. Last one here, I promise. And we're running a little more. Okay. Okay. The one thing that it sounds like I'm kind of hearing is you guys kind of got to product market fit by picking like a specific positioning or like differentiation, like where for developers, and really just like hammering on getting to some like minimum quality level for, this feature set that, there's huge demand for because of all the existing product analytics tools. Yeah. Does that sound kind of like a fair assessment?
Yeah. It sounds very simplistic, but that is what happened. We were like 2 developers fed up at using tools that just felt like they weren't really built with us in mind. And so we built one which would feel like it had us in mind. Yeah. And then we applied that to absolutely everything about the company, like the kind of people we hire. Like, we have another company value is everybody codes, for example. So we have a really high frequency to hire technical people into every part of the company, including like marketing and stuff, or sales, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, like, you have to really completely lean into that to pull that off, I think. So don't just get the features you're shipping. But there were some very basic features in the first place that we felt are a big gap for a technical, like, I want complete access. I want to get complete control of the data. I want to self-host it, so I don't need to execute to ad blockers. Like, how you get open source things, I can like edit it or debug it more easily. Really those things, which doesn't sound like much, but like in practice, it was 100% landed in there are communities of developers. There were particular like Hack and Use, for example, is where everything came from. Like, once we kind of landed on there, and we just knew that community as like people who read it like every day ourselves. Like, I just knew that like open source product analytics will land well in that community, and that will give us enough traction that someone cares and then we can just run with it from there. So yeah, but pretty much.
Cool. Love that. Awesome. Okay. Got 100 more questions. Maybe we can do this again sometime and I can get more follow-ups, but I'll let you go for now. Thanks a ton for doing this, James. I really appreciate it.
Cheers, Steve. It's always a pleasure.